If you asked younger Kamor what is social and emotional learning, he would say he has no clue. And if I asked my father what was social emotional learning because they want to know about it in my classes, he would say, I don't know, but I send you to school to learn, to come home, and to be a doctor. Well, I'm really not a doctor. So I'm not going to stand in front of you and tell you that I've always been a believer or a fan of social and emotional learning. I can't even tell you that I wanted to be an educator. To understand what social and emotional learning is, we have to first unpack what the definition of the whole child is. And that is, students' education and life outcomes are dependent upon their access to a safe and welcoming learning environment that has rich learning experiences inside and outside of school. When I hear that definition, 4 elements come into play. The first one I hear, and the most important, is the student. The next one that I unpacked is the family dynamic. Third is going to be the school or institution. And last but not least, the community. I started off by telling you that as a student, my experience was my parents wanted me to go to school to learn. As a first generation Nigerian, that was the most important thing. Learn, 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 or else. I've learned what or else was several times. But do we actually understand what it's like to be a student in today's world? Do we know how children are always feeling? Do we know what supports are available for a child that walks into a classroom upset, or they come back from lunch not feeling like their usual selves? That's the student dynamic. Next is going to be the family dynamic. My father was very stern because he gave me that or else, right? It was education over everything. If I felt a certain way about my math homework, if I felt a certain way about my teachers, that was not a priority. It was learn, 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 or else, or else, or else. But how are families supporting their children today? We may not understand family dynamics. We may not understand who is actually living or partaking in the supports of that child. We have students that may come from single-family households. They may have multiple siblings. They may also have other relatives that take part in the household. So how do they know how to support their children? The next element that we want to look at is the school or the institution. Would you believe before this meeting, I actually counted how many days a child is going to be in school from K to 12? Because I did, and I just Googled it. A child will spend over 2,162 days in school from K to 12. What better institution than to mold but also support that child? But how are they molding and supporting the children? SEL has become a big component in education over the last decade, where schools feel as if some students should live in different quadrants, right? But when they check in these quadrants, whether it's green, yellow, blue, whatever the case may be, are they tracking? Are they giving them coping strategies to help them feel better about themselves throughout the course of the day? Or are they just doing it because their higher ups are saying, here's a new program, deal with it? The last and final element that I heard was the community. We know the saying, it takes a village, right? But who is a part of this village? At my school, we know what community centers are around us, what religious institutions, what community partners need to be involved, because there are certain elements that they can contribute in supporting not only the families, the school, but also the student. Now I'm going to take you down a quick tour of why I chose to go into education, because as I stated in the beginning, I didn't think that education was for me because of the numerous times that Dad showed me what or else was. So when I was 20, my mentor, Jason, approached me and said, Kamor, what are you doing with your life? And I said to Jason, I don't know. And he said, I want you to try the summer therapeutic program for young men that are considered behavioral issues. And I said, Jason, there is no way I am spending my summer in the woods with a group of young men that you're telling me are behavioral issues. He said, Kamor, this would be good for you, but it would also be great for the young men. I said, I'm not doing it. Jason goes, well, I challenge you. Now look at me. Do I look like I'll back down from a challenge? So I went to that summer therapeutic program where I had a group of students ranging from 8 to 12 years old. And I'm going to tell you that first week was like a WWE match every single day. I was in for a rude awakening. But I needed to somewhat relate to these young men. And the best way I knew, look at my size, was sports. So I said that we were a team, and every team has to huddle up. So in the beginning of the day, we would huddle up. And my young men would sit in a circle, and they would talk about what issues they were having from the previous night up until the moment they walked into the classroom. To my amazement, a lot of their issues that they had, their peers had solutions for them because they went down those same paths. Again, I'd be lying if I said right after the huddle up, it was all kumbaya and we were singing and dancing in harmony. Because 2 periods later, there was fights, there was cursing, and I was still shaking my head. But at the end of the day, I made it an importance to have another huddle up. Because if my students left me angry, chances are that they were going home angry, they were going to come back the following day angry or upset, and then the cycle would continue. So I made it my business to make sure that we had these check-ins in the morning, the afternoon, at the end of the day, and also as needed. Now, the next 7 weeks were still difficult, but we did have progress. We did learn some new curse words, and then we did see different wrestling moves. And at the end of the 7 weeks, I said, I knew I made it. I survived, challenge completed. And I had a student come up to me and say, Mr. Kamor, are you coming back next summer? And I'm saying to myself, what is wrong with this kid? And I said to him, you know what? Brian, why should I come back? And Brian said to me, Mr. Kamor, this is the first time that my grandmother did not have to force me to wake up to come to camp. This was the first time that I was ready before her, and I was waiting outside for the bus to arrive. And I said, really? And he was like, yes, because I wanted to be in your group. I actually enjoyed camp this year. You listened to me. I was like, I listened to you. And then I said, but you were always cursing at me. He said, yeah, but you still listened. I was like, all right. So I said to Brian, let me think about it. Because to me, I heard 2 things happening there. The first was that Brian told me that he didn't have anyone who listened to him, right? That was important to him. That gave him a reason to wake up every day. And then the second was that he let me into his family dynamic, which was that it was his grandmother that was raising him. It was his grandmother that was trying to get him to go to camp. So after I thought about it for 30 seconds, I said, Brian, I will be back because I need to support more Brians. So on that last day, as I waved goodbye to Brian, Brian went and got on a bus, turned around, gave me the middle finger and said, Mr. Kamor, I'll see you next summer. The other counselors were in awe because he gave me the finger. I just chuckled. Because to me, I learned that that was how Brian was expressing how happy he was to have someone like myself listen to him. So it changed my path. I went from paraprofessional, I became a teacher, an assistant principal, and I got to become a founding principal of my own school. But in the back of my head, in opening a school, I had Jason, I had Brian, and I also had my dad in my head. My dad wasn't aware of social and emotional learning, but maybe he should have been. Jason was telling me that I needed to be able to speak to young men. I needed to be an outlet for them. Brian told me that he needed someone that was going to listen and provide space and opportunity for him. So as a school, the Waverly Academy, we looked into not a program because we know when it comes to social emotional learning and programs, it changes quicker than a pair of Jordans every 2 weeks. We needed a culture, right? Because if it's a culture, there's not really a need to change, implement, revamp, or anything. So we looked into the Crew Initiative, which was through Outward Bound and Kurt Hahn, which was a belief that there is empowerment and uniqueness in every single student, and collectively, as a crew, we will get to our destination. Or rather, crew is the glue in everything that you do. So at our school, Waverly Academy, we believe in several habits of character, and they are empathy, responsibility, perseverance, collaboration, citizenship, and respect. Now, as we think about some of these habits of character and unpack them, we can say, wow, these are strong words. These are strong elements that if one believes in collaboration, the results are endless. Perseverance, right? We all persevere. And the funny story is I had a kindergarten student who told me that on his pre-assessment, he got a 1. And I said, oh, it's okay. He said, no, but I used perseverance. And I kept trying, and I kept trying, and I kept trying, and I got a 3. And I wasn't excited that he got a 3. I was more excited that he told me he used perseverance. He kept on trying and trying and trying, and he accomplished more than what he did in the beginning. These values, these habits of character, are instilled in our students because the teachers, right, we're going to go back to the school element, the teachers are working on lessons and activities that not only that their classes are partaking in, but the entire school as a crew, right? And now the students are able to articulate this. They're able to exhibit these behaviors, and in doing so, they're going home. They're telling their parents. We're inviting the parents into the school so they can see it firsthand, but not only to see it, but also partake, right? So now the parents are like, yeah, we're part of the Waverly Academy crew, and our students are, and my child is telling me about empathy. I had another student that told me that they were outside and they saw a student that was sitting by themselves, so they decided to collaborate. Now, what did that collaboration mean to the student that was sitting by themselves? It meant that they were not alone anymore, that there were other students that noticed that that child was alone. They let them see that, you know what, we are a crew, we are one. Next, we have our community partners that happen to come into our school, and they're with us during the day, they're with us in the afternoon, and they also see our students outside of the schools. And they're asking them, how are you showing responsibility? And I have students that say, well, this week I actually helped my mom throw out the garbage. And they said, well, what are you going to do for next week? I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to throw out the garbage again. But then we tie in perseverance. Like, keep on doing it, keep on doing it. So now our community partners are aware of our habits of character. Our students are aware of it. The families are aware. So now everything is coming back full circle. Because at the Waverly Academy, it is our belief that it starts with our children because it's always about our children. And if our children believe in these habits of character, if their social and emotional values are instilled, then slowly their academics will also be fostered. But we will, most importantly, change the trajectory of any community. My school happens to be in a community that has been suffering for quite some time, but we believe that because of the work that we're doing with social and emotional learning, we will groom, support, and excel the whole child. Thank you.